Ready to start? Right. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's BIOMES talk. So first, I'll introduce myself before I introduce this amazing panel. My name is Brendan Lewis. I'm a second-year PhD student in the School of the Environment, and also I'm a member of the BIOMES committee. So just a little bit about BIOMES. So BIOMES is the School of the Environment's flagship seminar series. We host a lot of people in different parts of academia, industry, many different leaders, nonprofit, to talk about different issues in environmental science. And so we're definitely happy to have you today. Also, I'm gonna get the plugs out the way. So if you really like the BIOMES series and you're in YSE, we're happily accepting members to join our committee. If you really like what we do, you can please reach out to me or Melanie or anybody else that you know that's in BIOMES, and please come join us and be a part of organizing this amazing series that we have weekly. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our amazing panelists for today. So we kind of had this great idea of inviting a lot of these different members of the World Fellows Program. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to take advantage, to get to know about you and your different backgrounds, experiences, worldviews, and also, ask questions around research. And basically, it's really open. So anything kind of about your life. So first, I'm gonna go from my right to the left. So we have Zhao Zhang. Zhao Zhang is the founder and director of Green Camel Bell, a grassroots environmental NGO in Northwest China. He has done work within environmental education, water pollution monitoring, and community-based eco-agriculture and sustainable development and investment. Next, we have Babatunde Omilola. Dr. Babatunde has extensive experience in financing and developmental banking, working within different scopes and responses to climate change, COVID-19 pandemic, food security, public health, and many other things. He currently manages the African Developmental Bank and has led the UN International Task Force on monitoring and implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals globally. Next, we have Solangel Fernandez. Solangel is an architecture, urban designer, and urban economist with 15 years of experience. Throughout her career, she has been in charge of directing urban development and sustainable mobility initiatives, as well as large infrastructure projects, especially during trying political times. Recently, Solangel has held the position of Minister of Housing, Construction, Sanitation of Peru, during the transitional government of President Sagasti. And lastly, we have Kyriakos Kouparis. So Dr. Kyriakos is head of Frontier Innovations at the United Nations World Food Program Innovations Accelerator. In his career, he's worked for the UN Agency for International Development as Senior Innovator Advisor. He spent the last 15 years working at the nexus between innovation and international development. First as a biomedical researcher working on drug discovery for neglected tropical diseases, and further on in his career by managing programs to build better communities in emerging markets through science, technology, innovation, and partnerships. So help me welcome the World Fellows panel. All right, testing. Is it good? All right. So first, I would like to say welcome. It's an honor and a pleasure to have a conversation with you for BIOMES. So you're a part of the World Fellows Program. It's a very prestigious program that I read about. So it's housed within the Jackson Institute for Global Affairs, It's a 4-month program where the residency is based out of global affairs, and it's kind of a program where you're able to mentor students, really get involved within Yale, hold a lot of informational sessions, seminars to talk about your work, and also kind of visit classrooms, talk about different ideas, and be able to work with research for students. A very prestigious program. I read about everyone's BIOMES. It's a very deep scroll through your CVs. It's the kind of scroll we have to press the ball, then you have to scroll. It's not there. Yeah. And so it's very impressive. The application pool is probably 1.5% of applicants actually gets kind of inducted into this program. So my first question, I want to go to each of you and ask you kind of what are the milestone points in your career that you had that kind of led you to this point of being a World Fellow and your position. So I kind of want you to give kind of 2 or 3 things that you thought, job experiences, decisions that you made that kind of led you to this point. Not your life story. Yeah, I don't want to start at conception, but so here at YSE, we're all grad students. So maybe start at your graduate program and give 2 or 3 things that you've done. I want to start with you, Kyriaki.
Great, thanks, Brandon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks for having us today. This is really great. We have been here for 4 months as Yale World Fellows at the Jackson School. As you heard briefly from the introduction, I've had somewhat of a non-traditional career. I started off as a parasitologist, studying neglected tropical diseases, and now I currently focus on artificial intelligence and blockchain within the context of food security and humanitarian assistance. So I guess the first lesson is no matter what plan that you might have sitting here today, forget about it, because it might not come true. Jokes aside, I think what has guided me for the last 15 years was how can we use science, technology, and innovation to address global challenges? I come from a science background. I did a bachelor's in chemistry, a PhD in biology, and I wanted to use the tools that I was trained in to address global challenges that I was seeing in front of me. And so after my PhD, I decided to embark on a career in international development and looking at the intersection of science, technology, and innovation and how we can use those tools for the advancement of human and planetary prosperity worldwide. And so I think throughout that journey, I've worked at the UN, I've worked at USAID and the State Department, but the underlying pillar has been how do we use these very powerful tools to generate the most good across the world. And I think that's what resonated in my application to the World Fellows Program. The commitment to social impact, but also I think looking at how quickly things are changing, especially on the technological front, and how do we understand these new technologies within the context of social equity and justice. So I can stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about my experience so far. Thank you, Brandon. So?
Yes, well, thank you as well for the opportunity to talk with everybody here. Our program is finishing soon, so we really value this time together. In my case, I was trained as an architect. I studied architecture in a public university in Peru.
Is it on?
Not working?
Did you turn it on?
No.
How's it look?
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So I studied architecture in a public university in Peru, and at that time we were trained into, for the ones that perhaps into architecture here, we were trained into modernist architecture just to appreciate, Le Corbusier and all these great thinkers into the modern movement. But I was always questioning why we were being trained to learn something that we were just going to we were just going to be able to attend around 5% of the population that was really able to afford for those services. And I think it's a constant until today. So when in my way to the university, I always passed through some informal settlements that were developing in Central Hill of Lima at that time. And I was very curious of learning how the origin of this and what was happening in these areas. We were not taught any of that at the architectural school. So I decided to study this incremental process of development in the informal hills. This is San Cristobal Hill at the center of Lima. The neighborhood is called Leticia. And so I decided to go in, and we were taught at university, and at that time even our political leaders were saying, this is the cancer of the city, we should not do, we have to run everything down and make the cities again. And so one of the lessons I learned is to question things and to be able to think different, because not what everybody is saying is what you should do or follow. So I got into Leticia, met the community, started doing my research work there, completely fell in love with everything that was happening there. And I decided there that I had to become an urban planner. And since that time until today, I still have a strong relationship with them, and we always work together in this incremental process of improvement of the neighborhood. The second lesson I learned, it was to dare to do things, even if you think they seem too difficult. At that time, there was no formation for urban planners in our country, so I decided I had to go and study abroad, but I didn't have money, so I had to apply for scholarships, and I got a scholarship in Oxford Brookes in Oxford, England, and then another scholarship in Cambridge to study urban economics. And what helped me to get into these places was this research that I did during my studies, which was a result of thinking different and doing something that nobody was doing at that time. And the third lesson I learned after studying in England and working there for 3 years is going back to Peru and deciding to work for the public sector, because I realized this is where I could have a larger impact with my work, especially with the vulnerable communities that I was interested to attend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here again. I was here a few weeks ago. For me, my journey has been an amazing one, because I grew up in rural Nigeria, where I saw firsthand poverty, land degradation, environmental pollution, and all kinds of challenges that you can think of. So I wanted to actually study medicine at first, but I was kicked out of the medical school because they said I was not a good fit. So eventually, back in Nigeria, I studied agricultural economics. And then, of course, I worked with the federal government of Nigeria, working on World Bank funded projects throughout Nigeria. And that, of course, made me to go into international development. So my master's degree was in international development studies at the University of Sussex Institute of Development Studies. It's a world renowned. I think the institute has been named the best school for development studies in the world for the last 10 years, I think, in a row. So I then did my PhD in development economics, but I have worked on many issues. I've worked on global food security, I've worked on poverty reduction, I've worked on the Millennium Development Goals, I've also worked on the Sustainable Development Goals. Currently, I'm working on what I should have studied earlier on public health for the African Development Bank. So basically, I've been leading the COVID-19 response for the African Development Bank throughout Africa. We have a $10 billion COVID-19 facility for the continent. Now, for me, I think when I look at the journey, I think what is important is how we combine social, economic, and environmental dimensions of development to solve most of the challenges that we face in the world today. in the sense that now we have 8 billion people on the planet. So how do we create peace, security, but also prosperity for people and for our planet? And that, of course, led me to Yale. I've been extremely interested in the academia. I've done a few other fellowships elsewhere at Stanford, Harvard, and now here at Yale. So I am always very curious. I want to learn more. So for me, I think we are at a point in the history of the world where we have to address interconnected challenges all at the same time, holistically, by making sure that we combine all efforts. We deal with innovations that could be transferred from one part of the world to another part of the world. For instance, I feel that we have so many contradictions in this world today, in the sense that 828 million people still go to bed hungry every night, and that should not be the case. And at the same time, 1/3 of what we produce in terms of food is either wasted or lost because we have not been able to handle this very well. And this, of course, also comes back to the environmental issues. If agricultural production alone is causing 33% of global greenhouse emissions, then it means that we have to tackle social, economic, and environmental development equally. And so that led me to where we are today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. And so I'm growing in the east part of China, and during my childhood, I really enjoyed the nature. And the happiest time during my childhood is in the summer holidays. I return back to the hometown of my grandmother and play with the nature, so swimming in the river, to do some fishing. But with the rapid economic development in China in past 20 years, we have witnessed the serious pollution and environment degradation in China everywhere. And the air pollution, water pollution, the deforestation, the wildlife extinction. So I think that's my internal motivation of myself, why I have some interest and work for the environment. But it's not my first choice as a career, because most of the Chinese parents want to educate their kids to study science and to be a scientist. So that's also my first choice after I graduated from college. I was a nuclear engineer. But I'm not dangerous. I don't know how to make the nuclear bomb. But it's just something about the nuclear, and that's one of the best academic of Chinese science. And I think it might be most of the Chinese children's dream, and I just feel lucky I can be part of the scientist work. But later and later, I used to be a leader of a student union during my college. So it was about outdoor climbing and camping. But we, as a student, we are lack of funding. So we found out maybe we can use the title of environment as a reason for fundraising. So I just get in touch with environment because of those reason. It's totally not good reason, but eventually we didn't get any money for the environment during my college time. But I realized maybe environment is something we can do. So when I moved to the west part of China to be a nuclear scientist, I found there are no environment group in that areas. But I still want to do something about the environment. So I met with some friend and we made a decision. Let's establish an organization by ourselves. So we founded the first environment NGO in northwest China in the year of 2004. At that time, I just do the environment as a part-time job. And until 2007, and some other fellow know the accident, mountaineer accident that happened in 2007. I almost lost my life because of a mountaineer accident. And I was in the mountains about 5,700 meters for 33 hours. So in the 33 hours, I thought a lot about my life, my past life, and what I can left for the future, and what I really want. So I made a decision to quit my job as a nuclear engineer and to be a full-time staff of the environmental NGOs after I was rescued by local people. So that's my life changes in that year. And the reason why I was so lucky to join the World Fellow, and I think when important things, we have very clear vision and mission. And for us, we just want to protect the environment and also help with the local people. And even, in China, the situation can be very complicated. We are facing some political pressure. Sometimes the public cannot understand us very well. Sometimes we couldn't get enough resources, but we think that the things we have to do, that's the things what I really want. So sometimes, the organization, I'm the only staff for a while, and sometimes our organization, we don't have any money left in our account, but we continue to do that things, and later and later, our actions, our programs has been accepted by the public and by the companies, by the dollars, and even by the government, and they slowly realize our intention and accept our work and transition their attitude to us.
Okay, so I kind of want to ask for, and thank you for all of your, giving all of your stories and experience. And I kind of want to take a step back here, that kind of being in the World Fellows is a great opportunity to talk to many different people from many different sectors. Dr. Babatun, you kind of talked about how important it is to kind of have these relationships. John, you come from environmental NGO. Then Kyriakos, you work at the UN World Food Program, one of the largest international humanitarian organizations. You come from government sector, African Developmental Bank. So what kind of conversations are you having in the World Fellows that kind of tackle these issues, and how important is it to kind of forge these, across sector relationships? And I kind of want to ask, yeah.
Yes. Well, for me, it has been, for example, we have lots of conversations, but as we are at the School of Environment, I want to share the issues or concerns that I have shared with professors and students at this school. One of the things that we have been talking about is how especially developing countries are not being able to implement the actions needed to fight climate change and to fight poverty. And there are many compromises that our countries sign for the next years to come, but when you are in the government and you see things from inside, you see all these enormous obstacles to really implement those changes, and it's really very difficult that many developing cities in the world, in the global south, will be able to really accomplish these goals. We have, for example, a crisis in trust. Citizens don't trust institutions because of corruption, because of lack of actions or technical abilities inside institutions. That is one of the biggest problems that we face. Another problem is corruption, and a consequence is that we don't have trust, and without trust, we cannot move forward in anything. This is a constant in many of our regions. We talk about Africa, we talk about South America and other countries of the world. Another issue is that the projects that did get started have problems during the implementation, and they get paralyzed, they get obstacles that mean that you cannot finish to achieve the goals that were established before. And that also have led to very interesting conversations of how we need to be more adaptive in the way that we implement infrastructure today, and the importance that is to work together with the community without going with an imposed solution that communities then reject because of fears, because of not knowing what is going to happen, but working in a completely different approach, in a more adaptive, flexible way, and being able to introduce feedback and manage actually to make these projects happen. So it's very important that we have had lots of conversations with scientists from the school. Some of them have worked in the IPCC reports, for example, making recommendations for different countries. But if we don't see the underlying things that face countries today, institutions, lack of trust, political crisis that we face everywhere, it will be very difficult for us to achieve the change that we really need to do.
And there's a few points that you brought up kind of about developing the trust with the public, communication with scientists. And I think all of these are kind of, developing relationships and communication are like very important skills that we all need to have, especially here at YSE as scientists. Are there kind of any other skills that you thought were kind of essential to have, to be successful in your positions that you have today, and things that us as students should be developing, as we move further in our career? And I want to start with you, Kyriakos.
Sure, thanks, Brandon. I think a big lesson for me, and something that I've tried to do throughout my career, is to build multi-stakeholder collaborations. We heard from Babatunde and Sol that we have to address economic, social, and environmental issues simultaneously. So I know many of you here are really interested in environmental issues, and those are really important and critical, but you will need to collaborate, partner, work with, convince, influence a whole array of organizations and individuals in order to achieve the goals that you all are really passionate about. And so I like to think, at least the work that I'm doing now around food security, I'm taking a step back to look at food systems more broadly and trying to connect the health world, the environment world, the food world, the social justice world, and bringing them all together to really look at this holistically, because we need to work across sectors and we need to work across institutions and across countries, especially when we talk about the climate crisis or the food crisis. And so learning how to communicate the importance of your work, but also understanding where someone else might be coming from, is really important in order to galvanize whatever partnership you need in order to get the outcome that you're really passionate about. And so you also see that in the World Fellows program. We all come from very different backgrounds, geographically, sectorally, career-wise, and it's been really important for us as well to really understand all the different perspectives in the room. And how do we collaborate? And how do we disagree and still collaborate? And how do we help each other to reach a more holistic and global outcome?
All right, thank you. And before I turn it over to the audience questions, so we kind of talked about your careers, interpersonal relationships, and developing them. Then I kind of want to ask a personal question that I'm really interested in. So I'm a student at Yale, and I deal a lot with imposter syndrome. Like, do I belong here? Like, oh, I'm a failure. Like, I don't belong here. But I see you guys in your positions that you're in, like probably mid-career, later career. So do you still deal with imposter syndrome? Kind of like, am I like good enough? Do I have like the capacities to succeed? Do you have that internal dialogue? Because I see you as World Fellow, so maybe you're like, no, I'm the best. Like, I'm a World Fellow. Like, I don't know what imposter syndrome is. So I want to start with Babatunde and then John. So what are those inner dialogues that you have, and how do you deal with it, if you do have it?
Well, we have been selected as Yale World Fellows, and they call us our rising global leaders, according to the. So basically, we have been called to save the world. So our responsibility is
a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. I think the idea that we have to look at what are the problems in this world, what are the challenges, how do you fix them, you know? And but I think what is coming out very clearly is that you cannot do it alone. You need collective leadership to solve, you know, the interconnected problems and challenges that we have. And to do that, we need to build networks. So I think this is all about networking. And I think for students, especially graduate students, you will realize that you benefit a lot from networking, from basically making sure that you reach out beyond your own areas of study, beyond, you have to be multidisciplinary in today's world, especially if you want to solve the global challenges, you know, using one silver bullet to do that. So that's important. But I think the other good skill is the skill of being able to negotiate. You know, you have to be able to negotiate, but also being able to listen to others, to other ideas, and see where you might be going wrong in terms of your own ideas, and then see how to tap into that. But above all, it seems to me that we are in a world where we are facing common humanity, in the sense that something can happen in one part of the world and that thing can spread, like an infectious disease from the way we've seen COVID-19 pandemic, or the ongoing war in Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has led, which has precipitated into global food crisis, basically. So which means we have to address the problems of the world in a way that it's not just my problem because it's happening in one part of the world. It's our common problems. And so we have to have common solutions to those common problems. So those are some of the big ideas coming out of the Yale World Fellowship.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is we are very lucky because we heard there are more than 2,000 applicants every year for the Yale World Fellow, and only 16 of us were finally selected. So that's we just feel very lucky. And but you know, I also have very similar feelings when I was named as the Environment Hero by Time magazine in 2009, because that time I just received this award accidentally. I didn't expect I can win that, get that award, but this fellowship I do applied, and I also, yeah, of course everyone want to hope get that position. But you know, when I received the award as an environment hero, I feel very you know, uncomfortable, and I just feel actually many others have done much more things than me, but the word didn't give them but to me. And but later and lately I found actually this award, the same with Yale Fellow, the title is not only to me but for thousands of volunteers to do similar work on the ground for the environment, for the people. I'm just very lucky to be a representative for them. So as Babatunde said, we do hold the responsibilities to represent this group of people. And the first thing is networking, and to network different people, to get more resources, to mobilize and integrate resources for the things we want to do. And the second thing is more like encourage the younger generation and to show them, even you just do things as a grassroots organization, you can still be awarded as hero or awarded as a Yale Fellow. So that means, and because in China, the majority of people still want to do things about business or working for the government to be a big rich person or the person with a lot of power. But I think my case, my example will demonstrate to them, and if you really do something good for the environment, good for the society, you still can be successful in your own way.
All right, thank you. All right, that's great. I feel better. Like you said, I'm a hero, so I'll take that. Now I want to open it up to audience questions. If you have questions, if you're here in person and also online, you have an amazing group of people. You can ask them any questions, and this is a great opportunity.
Thank you so much. I'm very curious, as you work on increasingly abstract, larger global issues, in what ways do you as individuals stay connected to the nuances that are happening in the local communities and on the ground as you're kind of getting larger and larger and higher, quote unquote, in the scale of these problems?
Would you mind taking that, Kyriakos?
Sure. That's a good question, and one that I think about all the time, especially because my current role is global. I'm based in Rome, and a lot of the work that I do and my team does is not based, or all of it is not based in Rome, right? It's scattered throughout the world. At the moment, I still haven't figured out the right answer, but when I was in DC working at USAID, I was volunteering locally, and I was trying to, there was a local, it was called Kids Against Hunger, and they were looking at food security and providing support to local food banks as well as regional food banks. And that was a way to sort of stay grounded and to stay connected. In my time here, I've been looking a lot at food systems at a global level and how science, technology, and innovation can be used to transform food systems. But I've also connected a lot with local organizations, either through CBAY or the City of New Haven or City Seed, the Sanitary Kitchen. And that's also been really great because it does take you from the abstract and really ground it in the human story, which I think is usually missing from a lot of the conversations that we have, at least at the global level. We tend to talk about statistics and data and trends and headlines, but we often omit the human dimension of why it is we do what we do and what the real impact is on the ground. So get out of the classroom, go where the work is, and yeah, that would be my advice.
All right, do we have any more questions? So don't go to class. All right.
Thank you all so much for being here and for your advice that you've already given. I had a question about what I see as this trade-off between multidisciplinarity and expertise, especially at this relatively early stage of many of our careers, and wonder for any advice you would give about when do you focus on network development and multidisciplinarity in the arc of your career? Because I can see how it could be valuable to focus on developing one's expertise early so that you have something to offer to that network. And just wondering for any advice you have there about, do you think it's wise to quickly develop your expertise as much as possible and then start to branch out into these potentially more impactful networks? Or should we try to be doing both right from the get-go? Thanks.
Yeah, you want me to?
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I think at the end of the day, it will depend from one individual to another individual. Agreed. There are some individuals that cannot multitask. They just can't do too many things at the same time. But there are some other individuals like me that are ready to do so many things at the same time, whereby you can focus on your areas of expertise, but you can still also develop some level of multidisciplinary approach to what you do. But I think in the end, the gain of going beyond your own area of work is much more than if you don't do so, because you get to know what others are doing and how you apply them. It is through interdisciplinary approach that we can solve, most of the challenges that we have. If you, for instance, are an environmentalist, you just focus on that, climate change and all of that. You don't know how that affects prosperity, economic development, or how food security or agricultural production takes place within that particular context. Then you are limiting yourself because you need to be broader to understand how all of those things take shape and affect the environment. And then that way you can do better in your field of work. So I would say it depends on individuals, but at the same time, it's always good to broaden your scope, your horizon in terms of what you do in today's world. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think, we kind of talked about broadening our scope, being more interdisciplinary. So do you think it's more important to be an expert at something, or to know about a lot of different things, how do you balance that?
I think you can be an expert in one thing that you are known for, but at the same time, you have broad knowledge of other areas, of other fields that would have impact on that your area of expertise. That way you can even do much better in your area of expertise. But if you just focus just solely on, one little thing without understanding the ramifications, the surroundings, how other sectors affect that little thing, then you'll be losing a lot in terms of the contribution that you can make. Because things in today's world are interconnected, they are integrated. And that's why when we formulated the Sustainable Development Goals, it was exactly for this reason. The Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 of them. The first one is to end poverty, second one, end hunger, third one, health, fourth one, education, and so on and so forth. The idea was that all of those expertise will be needed, but you need to bring them, you need to coordinate them. You need to have coherence, in terms of being able to solve the interconnected issues. Because if you are solving one, you might actually be achieving multiple goals. And that's what we always say, you need to have accelerators. Those accelerators will give you catalytic effects or multiplier effects across many goals at the same time. And those accelerators, of course, will differ from country to country. But I would say it's good to have your expertise, but try to understand what's going on across other sectors.
All right, we have one question.
I have a question. Oh, that was loud, sorry. So I felt like the theme here was adaptability and flexibility is really important, but also listening to other perspectives. So, what I really crave in my own lifelong learning, and I think other people do, is real world examples of times in which maybe you could provide for us today of where your thinking shifted or changed based on listening to others and their perspectives outside of this kind of silver bullet idea of your own idea is the only one. If you could give examples, I think we'd benefit.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Doctor.
It's a vulnerable moment, I understand that.
Well, and one example I can give is in my work experience, I had the opportunity to work I started doing urban planning at the grassroots level, as I told you, working directly with the communities, and then went into local authorities. Most of my experience in the public sector has been leading urban planning teams in local authorities in Peru. And then I passed through metropolitan level to do urban plans and looking at the city in a larger scale. And then I had the chance to be Minister of Housing and look at the whole country and try to understand which policies could trigger change. But one of the issues that I was very aware of is that I had to be able to make the policies trigger actions that really get through the grassroots level and to make an impact in those communities where I started my work. And it's something very difficult to achieve. Sometimes at national level, you see, larger policies or everything is very slow because it's bureaucracy, there are lots of things to do. But one example of the work that we do was during the pandemic. We had very strict restrictions in Peru. Families were locked down around 3 to 4 months, very strict restrictions. You just could go to buy groceries, and just essential workers could go out. So it became an economic crisis because many people work for the day. They need to work to eat, and we didn't have more money for subsidizing the families that needed economic aid. It was very important for people to start working, and we were, on the other hand, in the highest peak of the pandemic. So Peru was one of the hardest hits, had the most hard time during the pandemic in the whole world for 100,000 population. And so we had to work together with other sectors, in this case, Minister of Production, for example, And we designed a strategy to, we developed 6 guidelines, some booklets they had very clear drawings on how to work with local authorities to be able for small businesses to go out to work on the streets at open air, with reducing the risk of spreading the virus. And since the time we published these guidelines, obviously entrepreneurs were desperate to go to work. They pushed their local authorities to follow the guidelines to make them really start working outside on the streets. In 3 months, 200 streets were closed to traffic in Peru, in different regions of Peru, and in districts that were in a high economic position, and also in the most poorest areas in our country, where entrepreneurs just came out, they closed the street to traffic and started new farmers markets or pedestrian gastronomic boulevards or artisans working on the street. And it was a very good example of how it's possible from the national level to implement policies that quickly make a change happen at local level. So I think that was possible because we had an understanding of how local authorities work and the relationship that they needed to build with local entrepreneurs in this case.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. Right.
Thank you very much for your talks. In this era of evaluation and filling out surveys after a grant or a program's over, I'm wondering if I can get you to skip ahead a couple of weeks and you're back home and you get a survey from Yale, the World Fellows Program, asking you to evaluate the program. And if each of you could, and I don't know what the questions are, so you can pick the criterion, whatever you want. But, and I'm also interested really in successes. I don't care too much about critique. That's for you to, but if you each could give us an idea of where this program was valuable to you, that you would like us and the World Fellows Program to know, that I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the question. I think the most valuable things for me from the Yale World Fellow is connections. And most of our time, because we are a grassroots organization, we are very much focused on local issues, local activities, but actually we still need to be outside our comfort zone to know what is happening in the world. And for my organization, we have working with the communities for this year is 18 years. And in the first 15 years, we just focus on local issues. How can we cooperate with the farmers, herders, and the citizens to increase their environmental awareness, to solve the environment problem like the pollution, and also transit their livelihood to sustainable livelihood. But since 3 years ago, when we realized that actually we are shared the planet, and for example, when we talk about the climate issues, China is the country with the largest consumption of coal, and China also the country with the largest overseas investment on coal power plants all over the world. So we realize it's also our responsibilities, because we can have the sympathy what this coal power plant, those program can have very negative impact to the community members. So we started to make a transition about our strategy to focus more and more those Chinese overseas investment on coal and other fossil fuel. And from the Yale World Fellows, it's really helping me to extend my connections to meet with the fellows from other countries, other areas, and I think I will continue those kind of focus on local issues, but also look at the global climate and environment problems, and try to just make our work more valuable for the environment here.
Yeah, I think we'll go this way, right? Yeah. For me, I think the opportunity to step aside from my very daily busy schedule, from extensive global travels, a lot of work, to step aside from that and spend some moment basically to reflect on the journey, where one is coming from in terms of career, in terms of professional development, and then re-strategize for what's to come, how to better position oneself for the challenges to come, but also opportunities to come, and how one can make better contributions in the areas where I work. I think that for me is the biggest value of this particular fellowship. Of course, the other one is ability to network, not only to network with fellow World Fellows, but also to network with the Yale community, the university community. I think that has been extremely very useful. I've been able to engage, especially with African students who are here at Yale, and I think I've been a great mentor to many, many of them. And so that's a big network there. And I think it has been an incredible fellowship based on that.
Well, to add on what Jean and Babatunde have mentioned, I think we learn so much from each other in our cohort, because we have all very different backgrounds, but we also learn a lot about the world. We have, every one of us come from different regions, and we face specific problems in our region, but then when we are together, we get to know different problems that we are facing in the world today. Like, we have learned a lot about, for example, freedom of speech, authoritarian governments, repression for telling the truth or for wanting to make change. Not everyone has freedom to be able to act actively towards creating change in the world. And I think issues like this really make us value what we have, and make also generate as well a lot of responsibility of keep moving forward for those who are repressed today and cannot have many limitations to make change happen.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. The people, the fellows, meeting faculty from many different schools, students at all levels, PhD, master's, undergrad, meeting folks in the community, NGOs, and the city of New Haven. So it's been an amazing eye-opener on so many levels, and having the opportunity to take a step back and get new perspectives from folks that are outside of my immediate bubble has been enormously rewarding.
And then I do want to come to a closing, but first I want to thank you for joining us here at BIOMES. You gave really good advice, very inspiring work. And also, I'd like to thank everyone who joined us online and here in person. If you're interested in, meeting these World Fellows, I think you guys are here for 2 more weeks, but they're here today. So I would encourage you to meet them here today in person. It's way better than sending emails. Also, next week, we have our last BIOMES is a presentation and seminar by Solange. So yeah, please come out to that. And if you want to hear more about her work and ask questions, any other plugs?
Yale is here with an appointment at YLS.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zhao is here for next semester. He'll be at the law school.
Thank you.
All right, so thank everyone. We have lunch outside the room, and I'm sure that please don't run off. Maybe you can meet some students if you have time, and we thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone.